Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Jesse Waters, Juan Williams, Greg Gutfeld, and Kennedy. 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. All right, we have a very busy hour coming your way. President Trump set to hold a news conference at the White House, while Joe Biden jumps back on the campaign trail with new signs showing the race is tightening. The Democratic nominee leaving his house and showing up in swing state Pennsylvania to attack President Trump. Take a look.
Do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really? I want a safe America, safe from COVID, safe from crime and looting, safe from racially motivated violence, safe from bad cops. Let me be crystal clear. Safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump. He keeps telling us that he was president. You'd feel safe. Well, he is president, whether he knows it or not. Mr. Trump, you want to talk about fear? Do you know what people are afraid of in America? They're afraid they're going to get COVID. They're afraid they're going to get sick and die. President Obama and I stopped the Depression in 2009. We took a bad economy that was falling and turned it around. Trump took a good economy and drove it back into the ditch.
President Trump responding to Joe Biden in an interview that airs tonight with Laura Ingraham. Watch.
If it weren't Donald Trump's America, to just use the expression as I'm president, you would have riots like you've never seen. The Democrats have lost control of the radical left. Don't forget, Biden wasn't going to come out of his basement until the election. Now he had to because the polls are so good. For me, now he had to because the polls are different.
Jesse, let's get your take on the events over the weekend. And now we have this campaign travel by Joe Biden, the first in many weeks.
I'm excited to hear the ditch metaphor. I haven't heard that since the Obama administration.
I actually cringed when I heard that metaphor. It was my least favorite of the Obama years, but
yes, he plagiarized it right from his boss, Barack. So Joe in June had 3 big things going for him. He had the economy, he had COVID, and he had civil unrest. All of those trends have now turned against him, and they're basically tied in the battlegrounds, if you can believe that. Just the other day, you had an Antifa guy in Portland shoot a Trump supporter dead in the head. And Biden comes out the next day and says, "Are you safe in Trump's America?" Think about that. He's admitting the Democrats are committing the violence, and he's basically extorting the country. He's saying, we're not going to stop until you vote me in. Now, I don't think the people in this country are going to fall for that. They're not that stupid. But that's the actual strategy they're going to try to employ. It's never been employed before because it's so stupid, Dana. Think about this. The Democrats are saying, we're going to burn our cities to the ground if you don't vote for us. And Donald Trump is sitting back while his numbers go up with Hispanics, with blacks, and with suburbanites. I've never seen anything like it before. You've had mayors and governors purposely not let Trump send in the National Guard. You had Mayor Bowser in D.C. purposely not protect the people leaving the Trump event the other day on Thursday. And do we need to dust off the clips of the Hollywood people, the media, and the Democrats calling for physical violence against Trump and his supporters? I'm ready to dust that off right now. The funniest line is this, when they say Donald Trump is stoking the violence. That's them saying, I'm mad at Trump for talking about the violence we're committing. I've never seen anything like this, Dana, and that's why I was telling you guys the other day that the Democrats must be nervous because they've been seeing these internal polls. Because now you have Nancy saying don't debate, you have Hillary saying don't concede, you have Barack and Michelle begging for people to vote by mail early. Does that sound like a confident campaign that's up by 15? No. That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
There was the former vice president, I always forget what to call him, the former vice president, now the nominee, Greg, today he was talking about rioters and looters, saying that he is against it. Let's take a little listen to that and get your thoughts.
Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness. plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted.
Was he hitting the right notes there, Greg?
He's in trouble. Dave Smith, a comedian, made a great point. The fact that right now Joe Biden has to forcefully condemn these riots, which was an obvious point 2 months ago, proves that the Democrats botched their convention by avoiding violence altogether. And it's really going to be hard for the Democrats to pin this on Trump after he offered aid to the liberal mayors, which they rejected, while the Democrat leaders, such as Kamala Harris, was endorsing posting bail for the rioters. So let that sink in. While Trump was offering to stop the destruction, they were more interested in letting the destroyers out to loot and burn again. So let's follow Joe's logic and the Democrats' logic. 1, ignore the violence and even mock those who were concerned. 2, turn down Trump's offer for help. 3, bail out the rioters. Then, when it could no longer be ignored because you didn't get a bounce from your convention and CNN's imploring you better do something, then you come out and say it's bad, only if you can link it politically to your adversary, shamelessly, even though he tried to help you. And then you pretend that you never ignored the violence as if there's no record of it. There's this thing called cable TV. We can look up every clip where Don Lemon or what's that other clown, Cuomo, mocked the violence as it was happening. So I think it gets more and more pathetic for Joe. I'm convinced that if one of his handlers went up to him and said, Joe, I need you to read the instructions to this IKEA bookcase on live TV, he would do it. He'd be step 1, America, separate the screws into little piles. How's that?
Those are, that's not easy. You should always just hire somebody to put together your IKEA.
Separate them by color.
Kennedy, each candidate every candidate is always dealt a hand, right? And it's how you play that hand that makes a big difference. And in this case, it seems like one candidate was playing poker and the other one was playing Go Fish. And now you have a situation where the mayors and governors of these states are saying, please don't come here. You're going to make it worse. I thought you'd get your thoughts, and especially if you want to speak about your home state and your home city of Portland.
So the narrative for a long time was conservative media was just jumping on the Portland story because it was convenient for the president. There was no violence. There's nothing to see here. These are peaceful protesters, and they're exercising their First Amendment right to peaceably assemble. And I understand that, and there were parts of people, but the problem was the people who are now standing up against it were the ones saying that there was no differentiation between the protesters and the rioters, and they did a very bad job of separating them. The problem is there was a great separation in poll numbers. Joe Biden was ahead by 8.84% in Michigan, and now the lead, just a month later, is only 2.6%. And the race is tightening in some of these critical areas, and it's not as if one candidate is playing roulette and the other is playing poker. One is playing poker and is trying to now switch to blackjack. So it's trying to play a completely different hand and shift the narrative 180 degrees. And that's not political expediency. That is total hypocrisy.
Juan, there's some off-the-record or on-background grumbling amongst Democrats saying, gosh, Biden should have done this at the convention. He should have gone to Wisconsin last week while the president was having his convention. He should have, could have, would have. What do you think about today? Do you think that Biden is on the right track to get out of the House and start campaigning?
I think he has been successfully campaigning. I mean, obviously, even today, you'd have to say you'd prefer to be Joe Biden than Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential race.
No way.
But I do think that he had his best performance today. I thought his retort was just terrific. I mean, you think about it, we showed that clip where he said, do I look like a radical socialist who's soft on rioters? And I think America looks and says, no, we know Joe Biden. That's pretty ridiculous. What a thing. But,
he
you know,
like
he's also on target.
Trojan horse didn't look.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So, and my second thought is this, that Trump is, when he says Trump is in no position to stop violence, that, in fact, for years he fomented violence. That's what Biden said today. He's exactly right. You just look at the crime statistics and you understand. hate crimes go up under Donald Trump. The Trump campaign, it seems to me, doesn't know how to deal
Fake hate crimes
with a man who was writing the '94 crime bill, who was tough on crime to the lament of many liberals, that he was tough on crime. I think they now want to say that he's soft on crime, and it's just not credible. I think they wish they were...
Election interference hysteria is back. Democrats accusing the Trump administration of a brand new cover-up after DNI John Ratcliffe announced a scaling back of in-person election security briefings. Ratcliffe will now give most of them in written form because of leaks from Congress.
I would do everything I could to protect the unauthorized disclosure of classified information, allowing people to leak it for political purposes. But we've had a pandemic of information being leaked out of the intelligence community, and I'm going to take the measures to make sure that that stops.
Of course, Adam Schiff is leading the outrage from Democrats. He's threatening the DNI with subpoenas and claiming that he's never leaked classified information.
I haven't. My staff hasn't. I can't speak for what all the members of the committee have done or not done, including a lot of the Republican members. Look, data leaks are always improper, and sometimes they're illegal.
Greg, Schiff saying he's never leaked is like you saying you've never drank.
Ah! How dare you?
Sorry. I didn't mean it.
That hurts. That hurts. I'm sitting out this segment until you apologize. You know what the thing is, though? We haven't heard from Schiff for months. And I think it's probably because he's been soundly humiliated by the fact that no one brought up impeachment during the Democratic convention. And also, I think he realizes that the impeachment circus played such a role in taking the attention away from COVID, so we couldn't get a jump on COVID. So I'm sure he feels a bit responsible for the death of thousands of people. And if he doesn't, he should. I think they're setting the table for Joe's defeat.
How?
They want to plan... they want a plan in place to contest the outcome, because I think they see Biden potentially collapsing in the next month.
So they'll just revive the Russian interference again. Dana, we talked about bringing back the ditch metaphor. We've just brought back Schiff.
Yes.
I felt like I fell off the wagon. We hadn't had Schiff in a long time.
What's with the booze?
I'm sorry. It's been a long weekend.
We were talking this weekend about, we were reliving your dumping in the recycling of all the wine bottles, and apparently you're not alone, Jesse. Apparently it's happening everywhere across the New York and Jersey shoreline. Okay, I feel like the administration or the DNI's office could have handled the communications on this a little bit better, because it was just sort of put out there without a lot of explanation. I think that the follow-up explanation was pretty good, but if you're going to do something like this, you need to do it in a way that shows that that you're leading with your front foot rather than having to backpedal, because I don't think that that was handled as well as it could have been. I do think it's a little bit of a parody to have people who did politicize intelligence complaining about the politicizing of intelligence, but I've always been very curious of why Democrats are not more angry with the Obama administration for not doing more to stop Russian interference, if that was what they were so convinced was happening at the time. And it is the Trump administration's responsibility to make sure that the election, it goes as well as it can. Obviously the governors have a big role to play, but when it comes to intelligence, I think that in-person briefings make a lot of sense, because if you're just reading it on paper, you can't ask follow-up questions. However, if there's a problem with leaking, then there are consequences for that. I just think the administration could have handled the roll. Happy Monday. Roll out better.
Kennedy, I'm not going to make an alcoholic metaphor. I'm just going to ask you what you think.
I think that Adam Schiff should answer under oath whether or not he has ever leaked any information to the media. Because it's one thing to make an assertion like that and a bald-faced lie to CNN, but if he is giving sworn testimony, I would like to hear what he has to say, because I don't believe a word he's saying when he says that. I also think that only focusing on Russia is a huge distraction. Russia has a tiny economy compared to China. China's economy is much smaller than ours. They have a $13 trillion GDP. We have about 20 trillion. Russia has 1.6 trillion. That means China has a lot more to gain if they gain the world's hegemony and become the single existing superpower, which is their long-term strategy. And they can't do that unless they affect the outcome of the election. A lot of people, the going narrative is that Russia did it in 2016. Why would they be the only player when there's so much to gain? And if we haven't locked things up 4 years later, shame on people like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and even Mitch McConnell for not doing more to protect the integrity of our elections if they are that vulnerable to foreign interference.
Yeah, send Mark Zuckerberg. Don't let him off the hook.
How dare you, Zuck?
Finish it off for us.
Well, I think the Constitution is pretty clear on this, Jesse, that Congress is a co-equal branch of government. I mean, they're in charge of oversight and funding for the intelligence agencies. So they get to know what's going on. That's the rule book. That's what the Constitution of our country says. So when you see somebody saying, oh, no, we're not going to give you this information in the way that we're accustomed to, I just think it looks very suspicious. And by the way, I don't think it's any secret around town that the big leaks were not coming from the Democratic side on that committee. But really? I just want to emphasize that if Trump says...
Who are they coming from? The Republicans?
Well, I don't want to get into that, but I'm just going to tell you, there were a lot of leaks, and they were in defense of the idea, as Trump says, that really he was being victimized, and Russia, fake news, Russia interfered. Everybody now knows Russia did interfere in 2016. Everybody? And even from the Republican side of the Senate Intelligence Committee, that Russia continues to interfere. So if that's the case, you know, if it's the case that what Trump says, no Russian interference, fake news, then what's there to leak anyway?
Is Russia the only actor interfering, Juan? Answer that. Is Russia the only one interfering?
I'm just telling you.
No. Don't say Russian interference, and not talk about Iran and China and every other country that wants to screw with our election.
We should talk about Russia because they're the primary actor that interfered in the 2016 election to benefit Donald Trump.
All right. But all the leaks about Trump colluding, that was from Republicans, right, Juan? Got it. Ahead, pandemic partying causing major COVID outbreaks on college campuses.
College campuses starting to become coronavirus hotspots. The fire department in South Carolina had to break up a massive pool party packed with hundreds of South Carolina students. They're all crammed into a very tight space there. And the University of Alabama seeing a surge in cases, 1,200 students testing positive this month. Other colleges, they've been forced to switch to online learning after the outbreaks. Jesse, let me start with you as our most recent college graduate, I think. You know, where do you think the responsibility lies here? I like to think of you in those terms. But where does the responsibility lie? With the administrators or with the students? I mean, if students are going to party, should the administrators have, been more cautious?
First of all, could you put up the B-roll of the pool party again? I think Dana and Kennedy want to check that out. Yep, just run that whole thing the whole time for him. Thank you, Juan. There you go. Oh. Not that. No. The guys. There you go. Here's what I think. I think you hear a story like this. There's 1,500 positive cases in Alabama at Roll Tide at school, and they don't tell you how many deaths or hospitalizations. Because I'd bet big money there are 0 deaths and hospitalizations. That's the first thing. The second thing is overwhelming majorities of the American people want things to open back up. What they don't want are disruptions to the reopenings. And sadly, the people standing in the way and causing those disruptions, a lot of them are administrators and Democratic politicians. I don't believe they're disrupting the reopenings for political reasons. I wouldn't put it past them, but I don't believe that personally. I think they're very misinformed about the risk levels of the coronavirus with regards to age, and that's been proven by all of the polling. Politico had a great story today, and they actually said this: coronavirus infections are down in nearly every state. The positive trends are real. Hospitalizations, deaths. Politico actually says this is bad news for President Trump, that this is going away. So let's just everybody take a deep breath. We're going to get through this.
All right. So, Dana, do you think maybe some of the college presidents and the like could have waited until we had a stronger testing regime in place?
Maybe, perhaps, but I think that they tried their best to do the right thing. but college students are going to get together. They're going to party. They're going to have a good time, whatever. Maybe this is going to be very unpopular. I don't really care. But I think, to Jesse's point, we don't know how many are actually feeling symptomatic, how many of them are actually sick. And maybe perhaps it's just better to keep them at the school rather than sending them back and exacerbating community spread to older people or more vulnerable populations. Now, I realize that could put some of the workers at the colleges at risk, so that's why they should take turns having to cook food in the dormitories and changing it, and then doing the laundry. Like, they could have like a whole camp situation there while they go to school and keep that virus at the college campus.
Greg, some of these schools are going ahead with fall college football. Are they putting people at risk?
Well, the football already puts people at risk.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I mean, I think that it begins with the idea of risk when you're playing a full contact sport. And they are young, healthy individuals. I think you have to look at the weight of the individual, since obesity is a problem. You know, we just got past a tropical storm a couple of weeks ago, and there is an analogy there in that a tropical storm knocks down the unhealthiest of the trees and the vulnerable buildings, and that's what this is. It goes after the weak and the vulnerable, and it's important to identify those at risk and not so worry about the people who aren't at risk, because that ends up diluting your power to help others. Yeah. So we need to assess the overall health of the country, which looks good because the death rate is declining and the cases seem to be declining. But I will say this, I think it is absolutely outrageous for college students to be getting together unless they're protesting. Unless they're protesting, then I forget it. I apologize. As long as they're protesting, they can do whatever they want.
Kennedy, would you send your kids to college this year?
Yes, they're 11 and 15, and they're geniuses, Juan. I would absolutely send them with condoms and White Claws. No, I'm still trying to figure out what we're doing in New York City, but my children are children. They're not adults yet. And I do think there is something to Dana's point about keeping them there on campus instead of putting them on buses and trains and planes, infecting even more people and going back, and if they're asymptomatic, hugging grandma and getting her sick. 94% of the people who have died from COVID have had 2.6 comorbidities. That means they have had an average of 2.5 conditions, whether it's age, obesity, cardiovascular disease, or diabetes, or as Wilford Brimley would say, diabetes. And therefore, that has compounded it. And when you're talking about a group of young, healthy people, if you've made the choice to put them in that biosphere, then keep them there until everyone's healthy, because, you know, a bunch of boozed up horn dogs is really a shock here, Juan.
Okie doke. What a description. Ahead, a progressive author causing controversy for what she had to say about looting. Greg takes a look at it next for you on The Five.
In today's world, you must watch what you say. If you think criminals deserve punishment, keep your mouth shut. Meanwhile, others can say just about anything and get a book deal. Publishers Weekly calls this new book, In Defense of Looting, a provocative, Marxist-informed defense of looting as an effective protest tactic. Author Vicky Osterwell says looting strikes at the heart of whiteness, of the police, and it's not actually hurting anybody. Yeah, tell that to the countless small businesses destroyed, many owned or frequented by blacks and Asians and others lacking the whiteness the author claims deserves punishment. The author has distance privilege. Unlike shopkeepers or the late Mr. Dorn, she has the luxury of a secure location, immune from what she applauds. This creep supports mayhem that harms blacks, as she hopes to get royalties. But if someone can be praised for advocating looting, what else can they do? If they're rich athletes, they can call out from work to support a man, the New York Post points out, violated a restraining order related to a sexual assault. But hey, you've got the moral high ground in a gated community, unlike the female victim. So long, Me Too movement. You see the trend here? Distance and money keeps you from experiencing the consequences of your own beliefs. When you tell the world you want the police to hit the road, or when you reject help to stop riots and then mock terrified citizens, don't be surprised when mayhem begets more mayhem. Demonize police and dismiss violence, and now let's defend looting. What might be the response to more looting? I bet you didn't think that through. It shows. All right, Dana, should anyone actually pay for this book, or should they just take it?
Well, while you were talking, I was thinking about how this past January, do you remember that the entire publishing industry and the left and Hollywood, and even, well, except for Oprah, everyone canceled Janine Cummings, who was the author of American Dirt, which is a novel about immigration and a mother trying to bring her child to America, very sympathetic to immigrants trying to come into America. And they canceled her entire book tour because she was not Latina enough. And James Freeman of the Wall Street Journal had a great point today. He said, where is cancel culture when we really need it?
Right.
This book should have been canceled, not that one.
That's actually a great point, Kennedy, in the sense that you have the left that goes after cultural appropriation, i.e. cultural looting, but not real looting.
No, it's such a gross rationalization. And we are in the cultural reign of terror. Make no mistake about it. We need to respect the individual and property rights in order to have a functioning civil society. A dysfunctioning civil society turns into Somalia. I do not want to live in Somalia, and I don't believe that woman wants anyone to come into her house and take her little trinkets and smell goods. I think she would probably be the first person to call the police. And taking a pair of shoes may feel great in the moment. Believe me, I've bought them. I know how wonderful it feels. The better thing to do is, if you want to dismantle the system, go to school. Even don't go to school. I don't care what you do, but do it as an intellectual. Do it on your own terms. Achieve something, make money, and then you can change the system. And everyone should be encouraged to do just that.
All right, Juan, I'm going to give you the opportunity to condemn looting without adding a but after you condemn looting. Can you do it?
I could start with it, but here's the thing. I actually agree.
Go ahead.
I said I agree. I don't know. You guys don't listen to me. But anyway, I agree. I think this is a nutty, crazy thesis. Obviously, it got her a book deal, though. So to my mind, this is damaging. I don't think that anyone should in any way acknowledge or consent to the idea of looting and rioting as a positive. It damages the very cause that Black Lives Matter and social justice advocates are out there working for, and it distracts from the real issue here, which is, police brutality and the like. And by the way, I just want to pick up on something. The communities, the neighborhoods that are most damaged by this tend to be poor neighborhoods with Black and Latino people. And so, again, I just think this is damaging and wrong-headed and should not be embraced in any way. The issue with this is, as Joe Biden said today, there's no place in any kind of social justice movement for looting, burning, fires. He says those people should be put in jail. They're criminals. But nobody on the left is embracing this.
Except they post their bail after they're put in jail. Kamala and Joe were behind that. They did. I mean,
there we go. Now you got the butts. You have a lot of butts.
You can read that. No, I do have a nice butt. Thank you very much, Juan. All right. Jesse, did you hear that they're introducing a bill that will deny unemployment benefits to looters? How dare they do that?
Yeah, how am I going to get my unemployment? First of all, Greg, how did NPR scoop Fox News on this guest? This is a pro-crime guest, you're saying? And this didn't make it into the Fox News Rolodex? I mean, how is this guest not on Tucker Carlson tonight? I mean, this is TV gold.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know. I'll leave it at that. I have a lot more to say, but we got to pay the bills.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Fast as 7 up next, I hope.